Good. Got it. Thank you. Thanks, Jamie. So while we get started, I don't think we have a huge number of people. So let's go ahead and we'll do introductions. So introduce yourself, please, and then just note if you are a voting member of NAM or not, so that our minutes can reflect that. And I'll give it, I'll start Gretchen Young. I'm the Environmental Projects Manager in Dover, and I'm a voting member.
Suzanne Woodland, Deputy City Manager for the City of Portsmouth, voting member.
Katie Ambrose, Rochester City Manager, and I'm a voting member.
Paul Velocity, Interim Public Works Director, Exeter voting member.
Sally Soul, DES, not a voting member.
Jake Roger, Town of Epping, I'm not a voting member. Dennis Coach, Public Works Coordinator for the Town of Epping, I'm a voting member.
Go ahead, Jim.
Kevin Rose, Deputy Secretary of Dover, not voting member.
I know. We put you on the spot. You can introduce yourself.
Oh, great. Hi, Mel Cote, EPA Region 1. And part of my appearance in, won't be long, I'm doing a topical treatment for what's called solar flare post sun damage. So good to see you all.
Good to see you. Thank you for coming. All right, and Jill.
Bill Sanfrini, City of Dover, not a voting member.
All right. I'm going to, we'll start with Jamie.
Jamie McCarty, City of Portsmouth, not a voting member.
All right, Ariel.
Ariel Wright, Newington Wastewater, voting member.
Paula.
Kalamazoo Piscataqua Region Estuaries Partnership, not a voting member.
All right, Danielle.
Danielle Gato, EPA Region 1, Stormwater Permit Section, not a member.
All right, Jim.
Jim Steinkraus, Rathdown Pignatelli, not a member.
And Steve.
Steve Kuchar, New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services, not a member.
And Lindsay.
Lindsay Butler, Town of Newmarket, not a voting member.
All right, thank you, everyone. Close this. I'm not looking at my emails. All right. Next is the approval of minutes from the July 13th meeting. That was the meeting where we discussed the residual designation authority.
Move to adopt the minutes as presented.
I'll second.
All right. Any discussion? Then we are going to do a roll call vote because we've got one virtual member. Is that right? We need to do that. Okay. All right, then Gretchen Young, yes. Suzanne?
Yes.
Katie?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
And Ariel?
Yes.
All right, great, thank you. Then moving on, now we're going to review the adaptive management plan that was revised for September 2023. And you'll remember that we had been updating the adaptive management plan in at the end of July, which coincided with when the permit became when our first adaptive management plan was required. But last year, in working with EPA, we agreed that it made more sense to update everything all at once, along with the CLF. Oh, good, and Melissa Paley is here. Good. At the same time that we update our planned projects, which the three larger communities that were in the settlement agreement had agreed to go through our project updates. So with that, I'm going to get started in the updates for this year. I'm going to try and do this briefly. So please, anyone jump in if you've got questions while we're going through this stuff. The background is relatively the same. There were some updates to the town and city specific backgrounds if you want to read through those. I don't think there's too much that we need to get into here as a group. And then starting in on the monitoring and ambient water quality in the Great Bay. So this is the first of the 5 requirements as part of the adaptive management plan. And we worked with Culla to go through and update, and Culla and Brown and Caldwell actually, to go through and update exactly what, we have been working on, because we had done this as part of our original adaptive management plan, but over the years, as we kind of reassess what we do and reset our priorities, things have changed slightly. So, I can go through some of those updates. One thing that I did put in here this year is, the difference between what the theoretical cost allocation would be if all of the communities participated in funding the monitoring work that PREP has been doing versus the amount that is actually being funded through the Municipal Alliance Group. So you'll see the first, we funded so far, the Municipal Alliance has funded about $750,000. And you can see the breakdown, you know, if each community had been participating in this in sort of a proportional and equitable amount based on the flow, you could see what each community kind of, what that fair share would be. And I know some communities are donating directly to PrEP for this work rather than going through the Municipal Alliance, and I think that's fine. I just wanted to make sure communities understand kind of what that amount should look like to be kind of in keeping with what the Municipal Alliance Group is doing. So do we have any questions on that?
Over what time frame?
This is since it started, so it's the 2 years that we've funded, plus the original that 3 communities put in, so. So you can see it's the more of us paying into it, the more work we're gonna get done. So going through the summary of the plan, as it's outlined, and as we outlined in our first adaptive management plan, the starting point for this was the RAMP, the research monitoring prospectus that was put together. That was done in 2020. And Culla, jump in here if I've said anything incorrectly. They've started there, and then through that work, they've annually been prioritizing different work that they've been doing, adding some things over the years. Some of the specific changes. Originally, we had talked about doing the tier 1 assessments every 2 years, and we are doing that annually now. So that that's been updated for an annual assessment. The tier 2 assessments were originally going to be 50 sites, and we are now only doing 25 sites. And originally we had not been doing any of the river discharge measurements, but we have added that. That was something I think EPA had really wanted to see, so we did include that in. And we funded that. We actually haven't gotten the results from that yet. Some of the updates, I think PrEP had put together a data management system. It had been in its beta form. It's now in, it's no longer in the beta form. So that is available for the public to look at the data management. Is there anything else you wanted to add, Culla, that I've missed? Then any questions on the data that how we've changed the adaptive management plan? This is going to continue to be an iterative process. Well, that's going to be kind of what the next meeting is talking about our focus for the next few years and what we're going to be funding. But I think that really helps focus what we've been doing. The next one is the methods to track reduction and additions to total nitrogen. This remained through PTAP. We always anticipated it was going to be through PTAP. There had been a comment in there about kind of alluding to whether or not PTAP was public source, was open to the public, and that comment's been removed. So PTAP is the way that we're really focusing right now. We've been funding it over the last several years, $100,000 total so far. It's open to every community, whether they're in MAM, whether they're in the total nitrogen general permit, or whether they're just in the region. But it's a great resource for anyone to use. And So you, again, I was kind of talked about the cost allocation, so $100,000 so far. Theoretically, this is what it would have cost. Right now, the MAM communities are shouldering all of that. Actually, DES continues to fund parts of PTAP, is that correct? Not so much anymore. They had, yeah, so DES had funded it for years. And it always needed to find a sustainable funding source. So MAM recognized that we really need to have this program for tracking and accounting as part of the adaptive management. So we've stepped up and done it. Probably not right away, but at some point, if it doesn't become kind of proportional across all of the MAM communities, we'll probably want to set up some sort of like user fee or entry fee. That would take some work, and honestly, I hope we don't have to do that because I think it's a lot of work for kind of the same thing, but that's something we can talk about as the years go by. PTAP is one of the really, really wonderful things about PTAP is that it is driven by the communities in coordination with DES and EPA. So we know that there's things that are missing in PTAP. We know that sewer extensions are not being captured in PTAP, and there's some other things that are not being captured in PTAP. Fertilizer reductions, and keep going. But we have the opportunity to be at the table to continue to work and update PTAP. In Appendix E, I believe it was, of the Adaptive Management Plan, we did get a report from PTAP this year using the BAT system. So Jamie Hull and his team, Daniel McAdams here, where they took all of the inputs, they were able to run it through the BAT system and see what our reductions were. So you can see in the first page, looks like Dover and Portsmouth have put in most of their municipal BMPs. And so that's kind of accounting for all of our municipal work that's in there. Rochester has really gone all out, done an excellent job of putting in all of their BMPs throughout the city. So that shows a really good reduction that they've achieved in Rochester. I think it's worth noting that Dover will eventually have all of it in. We're in the process of doing a stormwater utility. So as gathering the data for the private properties for the stormwater utility, we'll put it into PTAP as well. But right now, this only includes new developments or new redevelopments. Other communities have been participating as well. I know Newington was able to get a number of their BMPs in this year. And so that's just kind of something that we're going to keep working on, keep rolling out. Jamie Hull and Sally Sewell are available to help anyone that has questions on how to do it. I know Daniel would say you have to make sure that you have given the BMP, you checked it off as being installed. Otherwise, it doesn't count when you actually run the numbers. So I think some communities maybe had a lot that were in there, but because they weren't installed, it didn't count in these numbers. The other really nice thing about PTAP is that we're able to find the total phosphorus and total TSS numbers associated with the BMPs that are being removed. And I know right now this total nitrogen double permit really only focuses on nitrogen, but I think we all recognize that there's more to it. So having these other reductions is good. I've also shown on this sheet the reductions just of 3 plants that were able to share with me, or not 3 plants, but 3 communities. These are the reductions at the wastewater treatment facility that are above and beyond what has been permitted, and just during the growing season. And you'll see Portsmouth has really knocked it out of the park, done really, really well. Newington, to be honest, for the size, has done extremely well as well. And Dover, we're kind of disappointed with our performance this year. And you'll see we are upgrading the plant to help the numbers be better. It's also a really wet year, everyone knows. So I&I continues to be an issue. Any questions on these printouts or reports? Daniel, anything you want to add?
I guess I would just stress, as you said, Gretchen, just because it's in PTAP doesn't mean you get credit. So if it's a new entry and it's in the process, that's what it's for. That's great. but there's a lot that are finished, but just a town administrator has to go in and approve it and change the status to constructed and approved. And there's about 200 entries in there that are not getting credit. So
Yeah.
it's just sitting on a pot of gold and it's not
Yeah.
getting credit for it, so
Yeah,
make sure you do that, it's pretty simple.
so I think
If you have questions, please reach out to us.
Yeah, reach out. And I think the takeaway of this is that the progress is going, it's going in the right direction, and it's still going to take a year or two more to really have this become streamlined into our process and really have the PTAP capturing everything. I think the infrastructure is there within the system to do it. We just have to get used to inputting all of our data.
Gretchen, I have a question about
Yeah,
PTAP.
thanks.
And Daniel, I guess maybe this is for you. Is there a way that EPA could get the printouts in an Excel file, like as a spreadsheet form, or is it always just PDF?
From PTAP or from BAT?
Can you
I guess
give
either
them
one.
this in Excel?
Yeah, like the
I think
stuff
that-
that's in the adaptive
Not in
management.
Excel easily, so that is a direct output from BAT, which is saved as a Word file in this format. So it's not easy to change to Excel. We have.
That might be something on your end though, that you could adjust.
Possible. Yes, I'll look into it. Word we could like copy and paste. PDF is the worst option.
Yeah.
But I'll figure it out. Thanks.
But if you would like the Word, we can definitely get that.
That would be helpful to start at least.
Yeah,
So we can at least kind of, we
absolutely.
could get it into Excel ourselves that way. But maybe we can think about, if there's a way on the BAT end to do it.
Yeah,
easier.
okay, cool.
Thanks.
And for folks who aren't super familiar with this, PTAP is where we do all the inputting. The BAT is actually the tool, I don't know what it stands for.
I don't remember.
Yeah, no one knows.
I think it's like best, oh, go ahead, Sally.
Tracking.
Counting and tracking tool or something?
That is created by EPA and it has been given to us and it uses the performance curves that are in the MS4 permit. So it's right, it's kind of the most current way of tracking pollutant reductions. Okay. And one more comment on PTAP is that actually, I believe we're gonna start tracking land use changes this year. You're gonna do a push on land use changes. Yeah, that's what it, so this year, there's been a lot of discussion. When you put your information into PTAP, it does track your land use changes site by site by site. And we always said, it's gonna take an every 5-year look at land use changes to see what's happening regionally. And so this upcoming year will be a 5-year check-in on how we're doing. So we'll have more information about that next year. All right, going into the overall source reduction plans. So this, the intent of this is to make sure communities are planning how they're gonna achieve source reductions. And this was something that was part of the adaptive management, specifically in the CLF settlement agreement with the 3 Portsmouth, Rochester, and Dover communities. We agreed that we would update these every year. We would send them out two weeks in advance, and that we would review them at a meeting setting like this. I think instead of just going through every single one like we've done in the past, I'm hoping communities will just kind of touch on the highlights that they want to share. And then Melissa, this is your forum to ask any questions. Really anyone can ask questions, but specifically from a CLF perspective, if there's anything that you have questions about. All right, and then just following the order, I'm gonna get started in Dover. One project that I like to talk about is Huff Street culvert replacement. This is not anything that we had planned. We had an undersized, older culvert, and it actually was conveying very rough, which we've done a ton of work on. And what was it, March of this year?
Yeah.
It blew out and it just, huge mess. And it's not huge, like Huff Street is one of our small residential streets, but it ended up being about $100,000 worth of work. There was permitting involved. And while you can't really say that there's a nitrogen reduction, I think we all know that removing those constrictions is a huge improvement to the water quality. We don't see any credit that shows up in PTAP, but that was a project that we did that is certainly a benefit, and $100,000 in just kind of unforeseen costs. Two of our biggest reconstruction projects, Court and Fifth and Grove, those are two kind of neighborhood or entryway projects that we're doing. Those progressed and will be going out to bid this year in the fall, both including all sorts of BMPs and pavement reduction and water quality improvements. One other one that has been on the books for many, many years is a huge redevelopment, Oak, Broadway, and Central. It's kind of a triangle. Been on there probably since Paul Glossage, I'm sure. But we properly funded it. It's not funded, but it's properly funded in the CIP. So for years, that money has been, we knew, way too low, and we're now acknowledging it's going to be about a $27 million project. I know, it hurts, but at least we're actually talking about the real numbers, which I think it gets us closer to actually doing things. And there's a stream that goes underground through there. It's upstream of what we did with our Broadway culvert. So I wanted to point that out. These are real dollars.
Can I make a comment?
Yeah.
Like a lot of those drain lines are under people's houses.
Under people's homes, absolutely, under people's homes. Yeah. So we have every incentive to get out there and do it except for the dollars. And so now at least we're talking about the real dollars. We've been talking about this for years, but Dover's continued to make progress in the stormwater and flood resilience utility, and we're looking to have City Council take a vote by December of this year. So keep everyone up to date on that. We keep working with leaf management, and we're going to head in to do another big street sweeping this year. That came from our was kind of a result of our clean sweeps program that we did through PTAP, and we really recognized how much load reduction you can get by really going heavily after street leaves. We continue to push slow release nitrogen. So all city property has organic slow release nitrogen. Any new development is supposed to be using organic or slow release nitrogen fertilizer as part of their long-term operation and maintenance plan. We're not going and checking and enforcing that, but that's in there. And then in part of our stormwater utility, we're going to be offering a 5% credit for both residential and commercial properties that either pledge or can prove that they are using slow release organic nitrogen or no nitrogen, no fertilizer. So we're continuing to kind of make some headway on that. And then I mentioned that Dover's plant underperformed this year, but we've already purchased and are in the process of having installed upgraded aeration system, and we're in the design for a third secondary settling basin, which will really help us with these peaks that we're doing, that we're seeing in the plant. And then we put some real dollars towards inflow and infiltration, $1 million for next year to start going after the I&I that we're seeing in downtown areas. And so, those are real dollars, and we're hopefully going to start to make an impact. The other one I want to mention, the last one that I want to talk about is we spent about $50,000 this year with an intern, maybe a little bit more, doing outfall testing in the wet weather. And I will say that is a dangerous. It's not my favorite thing. I don't like it when she's out there in these torrential deluges collecting things and outfalls. I'll often go out with her. It's a lot of work. You're kind of beholden to the rain, and we have not had a single outfall that's indicated anything. So I just kind of want to talk about the return on investment with that. We'll continue to do it as part of the MS4 permit, but it is kind of one of my least favorite parts of that permit. So that's all I have with Dover. Any questions?
I do.
Yeah.
Your 100,000 I&I, you probably are going to try to get into the private side. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about what that means?
Yeah, we've been working with, I mean, Bill and Dave Frederickson, who's taken over as deputy director, can talk a little bit more about that, but we're working with the private developers. We bring the line to them and then they have to figure out how they're gonna do their internal work to connect. We haven't threatened any fines, or we haven't even really figured out how we would go about doing it. It's been kind of voluntary compliance, but begrudging, not enthusiastic voluntary compliance. That's slow going, but yeah, it's just, we realize it's a priority. We've done a lot of work finding where the connections are. Now we just have to work with the private developers to, really hammer them to disconnect. I don't think Dover's interested in funding any private work. We'll get as close to the property line, but we're not gonna go redo internal. But that might be a policy decision that we butt up against. So, now we've got this big push, it's gonna have to, that might be a policy question. So, good question. Any other communities dealing with that?
Yes.
Yeah, everybody?
I think one of the historical challenges we've seen is that some of those private drainage systems that ultimately connect to our public system are in sort of portions of our communities that are on the lower socioeconomic scale. And so it's harder to say, find the money to make those additional investments in your infrastructure before it comes, simply because of the, we already have a housing issue and affordability issue. And so I think those are some of the challenges that we're seeing, and certainly some of the money that we've been able to get, sort of collaborative money, CDBG money. We've had some state partners, and then working with the homeowners or the associations to kind of put a whole bunch of dollars together, and then the city is part of a voice in terms of how to really redo that infrastructure for the long term. But it's a big effort.
Yeah.
It's a big effort, and it needs funding usually from multiple sources, because the homeowners themselves, or however it's organized, depending on it, these are too big of projects and they need a more sophisticated partner.
Yep.
And that's where the municipalities can sometimes step in and help put the pieces together that need to come together to make those projects succeed. But that's sort of some of the challenges that we see. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you flagged this, because I think we should keep this as a topic that we talk about, because you guys are further ahead. We haven't done anything like that, but that I think is absolutely, we're gonna get there. Have to figure out how we're gonna do I&I. So we'll keep that as a topic. This crew. Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
So Exeter has done some work on the private side of the I&I. And it's the private side that pushes a lot of the I&I because of sump pumps and roof gutters and that sort of thing. So we've had 2 projects now. Am I talking loud enough for the roof repair?
Can everyone hear?
Okay. So we've had 2 projects, and if we're replacing the sewer line, just like Dover, we replace the sewer service to the property line. Now, this private portion that I'm talking about, and it's not every project, it's only 2 so far, that if the homeowner wanted to replace the sewer line from the property line to within 5 feet of the house, there could be a program, but to be in that program, you had to say that you were going to get rid of all your I&I, your sump pumps. And if there was a drain line that's close, we would bring that to the property line also. So now, how do you pay for that work on the private property? So they've done this twice, and it's very similar. They approved that the homeowner pays the first $1,000 combined between the 2, and then the town picks up the rest. And then to pay back that $1,000, they can either do it lump sum up front, or they had 10 years to pay it back on their sewer bills, which is for $100 a year for something like that. It's a no-brainer. But the important part of all of that is the removal of the private I section.
Yeah.
And it's worked out. One group, most of the houses took it, and then the second project, we didn't have all that much, probably only, I'd say 20% of the people.
It's a good model, though. That's interesting. All right, now I'm gonna turn it up.
Gretchen, I just have one thing to add.
Yeah,
Sorry, just in response to Portsmouth's comment on the sort of maybe communities with EJ concerns. EPA did just announce for EJ to have a program for these technical assistance centers. So that grant just went out to like actually start the technical assistance centers, but once they're up and running, the idea is that they would help communities with EJ concerns to secure federal funding for different projects and help with translation services and all those kinds of things. So I don't know if that might be something that those communities could tap into to get kind of some federal money or other, you know, help writing grants for funding for infrastructure projects.
Thank you.
yeah, thank you. That makes a lot of sense. Okay. Could go on to the next community, which I think is after Dover, Milton, and I don't see anybody from Milton here today. And they did not get me any updates. Newington, Ariel, I'm not gonna put you on the spot because I know it's not yet. So Newington's a little bit different in that Ariel works for the sewer. She works only at the wastewater treatment plant, and we through PTAP, and actually Jill Santrini here sits on the Newington planning board, so she's got to this. Have started working with the planners to really explain what's going on with PTAP and what's going on with the municipal alliance. I think there was some disconnect, so they are getting up to speed. So I didn't get a project list from them. However, I always point out that Newington is not an MS4 community, but did and was one of the first to adopt the stormwater standards in the SWA model ordinance. And so they have very strict development and redevelopment standards in their planning process. And we all know that Newington is undergoing and will continue to undergo pretty substantial redevelopment in their commercial areas. So they are poised to have reductions based on that. So I don't have any specific Newington funded projects, but I do see that they have plans for reductions. So I don't, Ariel, is there anything you wanted to add after that, on top of that?
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing a lot of redevelopment. As it is, we'll have probably a hotel going in within the next year. And then Chick-fil-A just took over where this Japanese steakhouse was over towards the mall. And then with Torrington taking over the mall area, we'll see what comes of that, but it's looking like it's gonna be huge.
Yeah. Then worth noting that you guys are just really well performing at the wastewater treatment plant.
Yeah, our
Awesome.
nitrogen numbers have been great.
Melissa, do you have a question or comment?
Yeah, Ariel, I'm not sure if you'll know the answer, but does the stormwater ordinance apply throughout the community or only to the town center and mall area? Because there's a lot of residential development happening, some of it waterfront, you know, in waterfront areas of the community. So I'm just wondering if those developments are also subject to your stormwater ordinance.
I would assume so, because well, town hall is in charge of overseeing the stormwater portion. So unfortunately, I don't have any information on that. But I mean, I know that they have it set up so the stormwater is redirected somewhere, but I'm not sure like what the layout is at all.
Jill, do you have any idea?
Yeah, the entire town is subjected to the stormwater regulations, and the new development actually that went in is, it has been entered into PTAP. That's the one project that has been entered.
Oh, great,
So-
thank you. That's awesome.
All right. Portsmouth, you're out.
Okay. Jamie.
Oh, sorry, do you have a question?
Yeah, sorry, I probably should know this, but Ariel, the great reductions in nitrogen that you noted, is that a recent thing, or is that just sort of been continuing over the last years? Is there been an improvement that I just missed?
I mean, I can only speak for as long as I've been running this facility, which was back in November. And we've continually had low levels, at least underneath a 3, all throughout these past couple months.
Okay, so this isn't like you made a recent improvement and that's why you made the note. It's more like this is just how the facility is operating.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, that's fantastic. Thank you.
And Carla, the reason I kind of talk about it as a recent, it's relatively recent in the minds of the Newington residents and planning staff. So when we go to them, they said, well, we just made this huge investment down at the wastewater treatment plant, which was what, like 5 or so years ago, not that long ago. So not within the last year, but within the last sort of decade.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Wordsmith, and I think Jamie's
gonna run the summary.
Sure. So we'll start with our wastewater treatment plants. Pierce Island, we discharged 38,000 pounds less than is permitted. So that's awesome. And then at the Pease plant, an additional 30,000 pounds less. So for a total of 68,000 pounds less than what we're permitted for. So, and that's up from last year, and we're targeting, we're continuing to improve the efficiencies over at the plant. And so we're targeting numbers higher than that for this current growing season and the next year.
So, I'm
I'll
sorry,
just highlight. Yeah, go ahead.
just point of clarity. Do you mean higher as in a higher negative number?
A higher negative number. We will
Okay,
be
thank you.
saving, we will be further below the permitted amounts.
Thank you.
So I'm just going to highlight a few of the projects that we have underway. We're well into phase 2 of our Islington Street project, which is has quite a bit of sewer separation going on there. We are also in the municipal land and redevelopment. We're redeveloping an old stump dump area into a recreational facility, skate park, installing nitrogen removal BMPs as part of that. Some other projects that we're working on that I'll highlight, we've got a lot of the same things that Dover is doing as far as street sweeping, catch basin cleanings, that type of stuff. But we now have substantial completion of the Sagamore Avenue sewer extension project. All the mainline pipes are in, and we're, actively working on connecting customers to that system. That's about all I have, unless Suzanne wants to add anything.
That's a fair summary of kind of the highlights, and although happy to answer questions, if there are questions on particular projects that we've got going or listed.
I do have a question. So a lot of your projects have sewer separation. Is there currently any way in PTAP to kind of capture that nitrogen reduction, or I don't think we have a curve for that quite yet?
No, there's not, but we acknowledge you can put it in, so it's there. And I think that's a big push to get that updated this year. So hopefully our PTAP numbers will reflect that next year, right, Daniel? That's right.
Yeah, so it's basically currently a placeholder, so we want people to put in information if you have it, and then we can always go back and once we're ready to put in calculations, because there's currently not a good way to.
Currently, I think we can figure it out. There is, yeah, you just have to run the actual credit and
Yeah.
through you guys, so we're all on the same page, but I think there is a way to mathematically calculate it.
Okay, I think we are making some inroads too, on how to kind of evaluate performance of reductions from sewer separation. So there might be more to come from us as well.
You know, I think the one other piece that's maybe worth mentioning is, we did have a major land acquisition this year out by the Bellamy Reservoir. And I don't remember, Jamie, how many acres, but it was basically preserving from development a very significant piece of property along the Bellamy Reservoir. So within the watershed, and within saving it from development is definitely a benefit across the board for water quality of the reservoir.
I believe that was 80 acres of land.
That's about right.
Is that a new acquisition? Because there was a acquisition in last year's adaptive management plan also. Is this something that happened?
I think it's the same one. I think we're talking about this.
It took a couple years to make it happen.
We actually did one too that we had intended to work with Portsmouth on, but we're able to actually do it entirely in Dover. It's actually Madbury property abutting some some Dover property, but that was probably 50 acres too. I didn't even account for that, but there is a lot of conservation going on up around that pond. And as you know, PTAP does not account for conservation yet, but Brian's been championing that for years, so we'll figure it out. He's on it.
Jumped on the right time, yes.
Yep, yeah.
And actually, I will also note, to go along with what Gretchen mentioned with her activities, as far as we've completed, we added a couple outfalls this year, so we're up to 209 outfalls that we monitor in the city. We have done wet weather sampling for 75% of them at this point, and similar to Dover, we have not found any sewer indicators when we sample during wet weather at those outfalls. And we've also completed about 70% of our catchment investigations associated with those outfalls also. So so far so good as far as.
But worth talking about the return on investment with that.
Yeah. Oh, it's I've got 2 full-time people that this was our third season doing this. So they, we don't have them work overtime, but they have to flex their schedules in order to meet the storms when the outfalls are flowing. And if we didn't have 2 full-time people whose jobs, they have other responsibilities, but when it rains, they're going out sampling. And, if we were trying to do that with existing staff, laborers, that type of thing, we would not be able to complete that task. So.
A lot of time and money and really no return on.
No, we have not found any sewer indicators.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's a good point to bring up. Yeah.
Return in what way? What do you mean by that, Gretchen?
I would say there's no, I don't like it because I just think it's so dangerous. And we have not had any nitrogen reduced by that activity, or really, there's not really been any water quality improvement associated with it, and it's expensive, and it's, I just think it's worth talking about that activity.
Right, versus what we used to do, which is when you had some indication because someone was out walking their dog, noticed some smells, noticed some discoloration, and then they report it to Public Works and you investigate. Because that is the way we used to do, you know, follow-up when there were kind of noticeable concerns, and then we would go out and do our investigation.
I'd say even dry weather, which, you know, shows you flow and stuff and allows you to do that, but it isn't quite so, you know, dangerous and dark in the middle of a deluge and sometimes after hours and things like that.
Slippery conditions.
Yeah, slippery conditions, homeless people, I mean, it's just, yeah, I don't know.
No,
that's
we
just
have
something-
quite a few that are really difficult to access because, you know, being coastal and on the river and,
Yeah, tides.
you know.
Yeah, tides, flash flooding, I mean, there's so much. And, you know, so if you've got 2 interns out there doing this, it is a little nerve wracking. Anyway, I just bring it up.
Is that Melissa's?
Yeah, Melissa, is that your hand? Sorry.
Yeah, it is. I am very interested to hear more about, because I know a lot of communities are talking about sort of wet weather sampling as a way to try to identify hotspots. And, you know, if it's not a fruitful way to do that, anyway, I'd be interested to learn more about this. But my question was specifically about the Sagamore Ave sewer separation or septic disconnection, sewer extension. And I mean, I know that project came about, you know, through as a mitigation project, but not, you know, as a sort of TNGP sort of project. But I think it might be worth thinking about the relative value of sewer separation. You know, the cost versus nitrogen load reductions. You know, and that sort of thing, because other communities maybe, or other parts of Portsmouth indeed, you know, might be considering sewer separation. So, you know, as far as a strategy to achieving objectives under TNGP, is there a larger discussion to be had about, you know, when and where this makes sense?
Did you mean sewer separation?
No,
or
I mean
or
sewer extension. Sewer extension. I'm sorry, I keep using sewer, sewer extension as and
That's good.
disconnection.
We
of
talked
septic
a lot
system.
about CSOs last night, yes.
I've got that on my brain, Suzanne, yes. There was a whole lot of, that was a very good meeting, by the way, but anyway, you know, I'm talking about sewer extension and I know that's something that Rochester has given some thought to in certain areas, as well as Dover. So, you know, maybe sort of using your experience in Portsmouth on Sagamore as a kind of a case study for, you know, the cost benefit analysis and so on.
Definitely happy to review the numbers. It certainly was a much more expensive project than we had originally anticipated. I will say this, our city council political body did appropriate funds to basically encourage connections by making it fairly cost effective. We purchased the pumps that had to be used because it's a low pressure system in order to connect up. And we prioritize those with failing systems and et cetera. So, you know, it's not, everyone wants to take advantage of that. We're leaving it voluntary right now when you connect, assuming you have a functioning septic system. But it was over $1 million, as I recall, Brian or Jamie, you can remind me, but it was over $1 million that we've put towards supporting these connections to the low pressure system.
Private connections, correct. Well, what about
Sagamore Ave sewer extension? Yes, about 90 properties affected.
Yeah, give or take 100, yeah.
88 is, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, yeah. So we're also, you know, we border communities that are interested in expanding sewer. So, you know, my thought is look at that, there's 2 of me on the screen now, it's a little scary. So like, we've got Lafayette Road in Rye that has some interest in bringing sewer down to where there's current septic. We've got Greenland in their commercial area along Route 33, you know, that's interested in septic, in, you know, sewer. You know, who would get the credit for that, I guess, to some degree? It's like,
You would.
Okay.
Not that I'm like the credit fairy, but like, I would say, that's definitely Portsmouth gets that credit if you're doing that work, yeah.
Well, we wouldn't, we're not gonna pay for it. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, it would be, the people along the way, but still, it'd be coming to our system, so. Yeah, we would treat it definitely, and then go through the rest of our pipes to get there. So, yeah, all right.
I'm happy to give you a wand and wink.
Yeah,
if that
I
helps.
mean, I feel like, I think that's kind of like what was so great about this permit is that you could think outside. I mean, I would advocate for Portsmouth to get credit.
And I will say there were definitely failing systems in the area where we brought out the sewer. It is along an impaired water body. And a lot of the properties that we're looking at are within that, sort of critical area next to the water body, so.
All right, Katie.
Comment here. So Brian, you talked about bringing some of your neighboring towns into your system. And remember, you've got a maximum daily limit of how many pounds of nitrogen you can discharge. Do you plan on, if you do that, going back and trying to get that maximum daily enhanced? Because now you're bringing other areas that are not your city, not your town, into that system.
So I'll speak.
Good question, Suzanne.
I was gonna say, I just talked to our engineer this morning about that because I had a feeling that question might be asked.
Would you like to answer it, Jamie? Or do you want
I'll
me?
try. You can tell me if I'm off, but we're currently running at, we've got an additional 50% capacity that we could treat and still meet the limit. And we're also, we've reduced, we're seeing a reduction in inputs into the plant down 10%. So, through water efficiency and sewer separation. So, I won't speak for others, but, I think we definitely have the capacity to add on more customers.
But it's also written specifically in the permit to, right? Sorry.
Well, there's been an evolution in permits, so Portsmouth has been pushing to get the max day out because that's not a good indicator of water quality compliance. So.
But the permit actually specifically allows communities to increase their daily maximum load if they are disconnecting septic. So I don't know about extra municipal interconnection and how that would impact the permit, but EPA folks, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that is accounted for in the permit or allowed under the permit.
So we have capacity, I can tell you that, and we could talk more permit. Basic. Don't worry about 100 years. I know we've got it now. We've got it now, and for the foreseeable, before, at least while I'm still doing this job.
All right, Katie.
Sorry.
You're up.
All good conversation. I'll take a similar approach and run through some of the highlights. Throughout our report, I won't point out each one, but we did have some updates to estimated load reduction potential numbers. So that is sprinkled throughout our updates. Under planned structural BMPs, you'll note that for Colonial Pines sewer extensions, speaking of sewer extensions, phase 3 construction of drainage infrastructure improvements is 100% complete, and we're moving on to design for phase 4 in 2024. We are all very excited that Stratford Square Roundabout is scheduled to be complete this December. It will be a great improvement in our downtown, and so it'll be nice to have that construction project that's had a lot of impact with our traffic complete. Union Street Municipal Parking Lot, we are working on finishing touches on the final design for that project. Moving on to the non-structural BMPs, those are all continuing efforts, so I won't spend too much time on that. We're just continuing to allocate resources and time there. Other efforts, as Gretchen had touched upon, Rochester has been working hard to enter into PTAP all of our existing municipal structural BMPs, as well as a new effort in 2023 was the entry of existing private BMPs. So that was a big undertaking that we had progress on this past year. I will also update under other efforts that our the Water Street redevelopment project, that's actually under later on. So we'll wait on that. But the other effort, our draft report was updated for the nitrogen source identification report in June 2023 to include our planned retrofits and estimated costs and feasibility. So we're going to continue to review potential catchments with high loading and BMP potential over the next year and into the future. Project, the septic receiving facility upgrade. We've been talking about this ongoing since 2021. Our evaluation concluded that receiving septic at the Headworks facility did not significantly impact secondary or tertiary treatment processes. So we do have that data now. Forward, we're going to move forward with construction upgrade through 2024. We're continuing efforts with our sewer system master plan. That is a big project, and we worked on smoke testing this summer. Another important report is our nitrogen reduction report. That effort is ongoing, and we're anticipating completion within the fall of next year. And then the last project I wanted to put an update on is our Water Street project, and an update that is an update from actually this report, as well as that we had our kickoff meeting for that project.
Question, how did you, or who did you assign to put in all that information on the private BMPs?
We've been utilizing Geosyntex, so we did have a consulting help. Renee Bordeaux, you maybe familiar with her. She's been a great resource for us on undertaking that effort.
That's the batch import. Yeah, so that the batch import in the PTAP is a great tool if you have a lot of entries that you have to catch up on. So we're kind of offering it like a one-time deal to all the communities to catch up. And it's basically a spreadsheet with all the same information, and we can just dump it right in the PTAP. So you don't have to go through and enter in every entry individually. So that really helps.
Yeah, we can leverage that technology.
Yep.
And did she just go through like planning documents?
Yeah, in coordination with planning documents, and now that we have some data also with our ordinance as well. Yeah, she's done a lot of like work there for that, but yeah, the batch was a big help.
And then PTAP printout showed a lot of great stuff in Rochester, but it did not capture your Colonial Pines. All of that work.
We were, Daniel and I were just having a conversation about that. We believe there's, it's definitely a way to enter it in there, but we need to think about calculating it.
And I think we can figure it out, but I think.
Yeah. So I noted it as something for us to take up.
Right? Yeah. All right. Any questions for Rochester?
Just curious how many septic systems were disconnected through that Colonial Pines extension, sewer extension?
Phase 3 of 4, so it depends upon which phase. I don't have a total to date for you, but I can send it to you offline.
So she said, it says just for what was done last year was 71 properties. for phase 3 was 71 properties, and then phase was 71 last year. A lot. I mean, that's a lot.
Yeah.
It's good.
And it, as Suzanne mentioned, it is an expensive, slow effort, been years in the making, so we're plugging along with it. But we are seeing a lot of connections, so we're moving forward with it.
Great, cool. So then I've got Rollinsford. I don't know if anyone's here from Rollinsford. I did not get an update from them this year. And I think that concludes our update. Oh, well, no, because you've got your separate update. Unless you want to, absolutely.
Sure.
Yeah.
This is for Exeter. And start out with the wastewater treatment facilities. Our guys are doing a very good job, and they're producing less than that 3 milligrams per liter right now. So kudos to them. We talked earlier today about I&I. We just finished a project, and we are under design with another project that was mostly centered around I&I removal. Some pump redirection, that was part of our previous discussion also. We also used to, until the Department of Labor gave us a visit, had a septic receiving facility. And that really helped, and I don't know the chemistry involved here, with the denitrification process. We had to shut that down, but we're got the design done. We should be going out to bid for whatever improvements we need to be in 2024. We expect to have that in the fall of 2024 back up and running. As far as fertilizers go, with the help of Sally's program, we have a Healthy Lawns education program. Also deals with some flyers. We're not done with that yet for the hit the pavement running, but that is underway. Land use regulations, and this is probably to me one of the most exciting ones, because here you can start planning how you can make a difference. And I had our town planner give this to me here this morning. The Exeter Planning Board, and I'll just read this email here. Exeter Planning Board is discussing an overhaul of their zoning ordinance that seeks to incentivize redevelopment of existing properties to allow continued residential and commercial growth while minimizing impacts to undeveloped areas. The amendments seek to provide increased density, increased height, and reduced parking requirements to steer growth in already developed areas that have the infrastructure to support the new development. Redevelopment of existing properties can minimize the addition or even reduce the amount of impervious areas, negate the need for new roadways, sidewalks, and other infrastructure to support the development since it already exists. That was his comment. It's not really totally geared toward this whole Great Bay thing. There's many reasons to do something like that, but I thought that was worth mentioning here. You'll get a charge out of this one here. Let's continue and try to enhance our pet waste stations that we have throughout town. So we actually have a gentleman that collects those every day and weighs how much we've collected. So from January to the end of June, half a year, he collected 5,300 pounds of dog food. So it's quite a bit. We also have a catch basin replacement program. A lot of our CIPs are geared towards fixing sewer lines, water lines, drain lines in the same street, then do a reconstruction project. We got quite a few catch basins that have less than a foot, maybe even 0 foot sumps in it, brick ones that were made back in the day. So we're making progress with that, but we also have some separate from there to help facilitate the pavement management program. we have extra catch basins being funded for replacement, through that program. Then we get down to a septic system, maybe an advanced system, incentive program. Again, it's with the help of, Sally's funding. I should have a draft report of that coming up in about, a month or so. And I don't know what it's going to say quite yet, but, is there any way to incentivize these, advanced septic systems, to have less of the nutrients going into the waterways? And I also understand that some of the prep group, is doing a very similar activity also, with their analysis. And when I looked up and saw, Carlo up there too, we invited him to the town of Exeter to talk to a group of people. It was more of that traveling road show or whatever, is Healthy Great Bay, and he did a fabulous job. So thank you for that, Carlo. Stormwater structural BMPs. Well, I gotta tell you a little story here. So you had an engineering company come in and review where you could put these structural BMPs, and you rated them. So we go to try to put the first one in, it doesn't work because the groundwater's too high. Go to the next second best one in town, in that big drainage area. That one didn't work either. So now we're on the third one. And by the time Sally's helping us out with this one here again too, now that you're almost final design, you go to do the latest cost estimate, and it's way more than whatever you had before. So now instead of designing for a half inch storm, now we're down to a 1/4 inch storm. It just shows you how all the good intentions end up costing a heck of a lot of money. And even with that BMP to remove 68 pounds of nitrogen, still costs us $168,000. So it's not inexpensive. And then we're also using set with Sally's help again, evaluating other areas of town that could have some of these structural BMPs installed. That's it.
Could I have a follow-up question? It came up last night, Melissa may remember this, because we did wastewater 101. And we had some of our staff present to, really do the hard work, as opposed to those that often sit in offices. And we talked about dog waste and the fact that, Portsmouth, like all the other communities, I'm sure you try and encourage people to put, the dog would pick it up and put it in a bag. And what our staff was sharing with the community last night is that a lot of those bags wind up in catch basins.
Yeah.
And so I am curious whether you sound like you have dog waste stations, so that when they bag it, there's a place for them to put it. Do you find dog waste in your catch basins, or are you seeing, or do you think that dog waste stations are keeping those little bags out of your catch basins?
We're seeing less and less in catch basins. I can't say we don't see any.
Yeah.
But some of the places that we're putting these stations are like little loop things.
Yeah.
And stuff like that, so that there's a basket there too that they can deposit in on the way out. And we're probably seeing more of them tied to bushes now than into the catch basin.
Interesting. Okay. All right, thank you. Trying to solve a problem that we know. Yes.
Great. Okay, I think that's it for our community update. And then just wrapping up the last two sections, D and E of the adaptive management plan. There were not any major changes in this. So it had to do with evaluating the science. There was, I think, a change in some of the expert panel, but not any substantial changes in that method, and no substantial changes in the timeline for completion of a TMDL or TMDL alternative. I do believe that that's something that we'll be talking about as we go into the funding for the next round next year or two of where we're going with that. So for now, no major updates to those. And that wraps up our adaptive management plan.
Gretchen,
Yeah.
before we move on, I did have a question. It's kind of-
Yes.
It occurred to me after we've gone well past that section in the front where this has to do with the theoretical versus the actual cost allocations for, perhaps monitoring and research work
Yep.
and for the PTAP support. And the two sort of scenarios are the theoretical, where if you divided the total cost at 751,000 by all the communities, 12 versus the 7 that are official MAM members. But you also mentioned that some of the communities that are non-MAM communities are paying like direct payments, in some cases in-kind support, as I understand it. And so that kind of gets lost. So like the monitoring right now from MAM's perspective was $750,000, but were there non-MAM communities that contributed that actually, if you added that, would it actually, just to get, all I'm getting at is what the actual cost of the monitoring, what the actual cost of TTAP is versus what MAM is paying for, because there are other communities that are paying for it indirectly, or directly rather, but not through the MAM.
Sure. Well, PPAP is right now entirely MAM.
Okay.
Brett, Colin, are you able to share how much funding you've received from non-MAM communities? You don't have to name names, but.
Yeah, it's essentially, if you're talking about cash, it's low 30s. If you include, there's one community that is providing in-kind, and right now I believe we're at around $14,000 for that in-kind support. So it's really, in addition to MAM, there's only 4 other communities that are contributing, which is really, really too low, and something that I've been trying to do and failing at for years is trying to get more communities involved.
And Mel, to that point, I didn't want to. Well, I would argue though that other communities are contributing at a far lower rate than what would be. And I think it's important for those communities and for CULA to see that, I think the community that's doing 14,000 might actually be right. No, so that would be, it's about 10,000 less than it would have been. And then I think there's some other communities. So this isn't, I just wanted to get this out there. Communities, I think it's completely, I think it makes sense for everyone to work for MAM work through MAM because I see a lot of benefit to working together, et cetera. But I understand that there's a wish to work directly with PrEP, but these are the numbers. Like if you're really participating at an equal share, this is kind of the numbers you're looking at.
I mean, to that point, I mean, you had reached out, I forget when last
Yeah.
quarter, an email to the non-participants to get any kind of feedback at all. I haven't heard about that.
Well, we've got Epping here at the table today.
That's great.
And
Missed the introductions at the beginning.
yeah, sorry. So that's exciting. And we've got Lindsay Butler from Newmarket is here. So, we have never added anyone since we first started, but the hope is that I think we've got some momentum.
Great. Excellent.
Yeah. All right. Then the updates, the RDA progress update. I think, are we done kind of going through adaptive management? All right, great. Then moving on to item number 4 is the residual designated authority progress update. I don't have anything to report. I don't know, Melissa, if you have anything to report on your petition, or if the EPA has anything they want to share?
I'll just say that we have begun working with Jamie and others at the Stormwater Center, and talking with some folks at the Environmental Finance Center through the University of Southern Maine about trying to construct a sort of what we're kind of referred to colloquially as sort of the gold standard, that for a stormwater management program that would constitute a basis for requesting an exemption to RDA. So that is a process that is in its very early stages, but something that all along we have maintained that we want to incentivize municipalities to try to do this work and to do it locally and more effectively if possible. So that's something that we're pursuing. I think we can probably provide more information as this project shapes up a little bit more. Gretchen's been sitting in on those meetings. I actually haven't even been to any of the meetings, but I know Jamie's been having some conversations about what this would look like and how to develop this idea. So, we maintain that we don't desire to thwart municipal initiatives around stormwater utility and so on. So we would like to see this project evolve and get those communities who have been considering utilities back on track with that, without concern that there would be overlapping regulation between sort of a federal and a local approach to stormwater kind of a comprehensive and sustainable stormwater management program.
Cool. Thanks, Melissa. Anything from EPs?
I think Danielle might.
Danielle?
Sure, we don't have a ton to report, but I will say that EPA has been pursuing some funding to figure out the parcel analysis piece of it really kind of finely, a little bit more precisely. And we've made a lot of progress on that and hope to sort of get that contract up and running soon. So we should start to see some interesting results from that.
Great. Great, cool. Any other questions on the RDA? I don't know, Daniel, there's not really too much for us to update. We sort of started looking at parcel, but. Then moving on to item number 5, the annual funding schedule. That's our next 2 meetings. So we'll talk about setting a meeting in October. Between now and then, I'd really like to receive, you can either send them to me or to Katie or Suzanne, kind of proposals for work that you'd want to include in MAM. I anticipate prep, obviously revisiting a lot of the monitoring and work that we're doing. So we'll see another proposal from them, and they'll work with Brian Caldwell to really fine tune that and make some recommendations in the October meeting. And then PTAP, I assume we'll see some stuff again from you folks that we could take a look at. I don't know if anyone else has ideas that they want to put out there, but it's just something to think about between now and October. And then October was when we would hear all of that, and the executive committee would review the proposals and make a recommendation. And then November, usually November or early December, we'll have a full members vote on the recommendation of that. So those are the next 2 meetings. Moving on, stakeholder comments. Melissa, did you have anything from the stakeholder committee?
No, I don't. Yeah, as you may be aware, the stakeholder committee has been kind of inactive. So there's really nothing to report.
Okay. All right, public comment. Anyone from the public? Anything else you want to add in?
Oh, question,
Sure.
what happened with the proposal, I think it was for Great Bay 2030 funding for the shared, or assessing
Yeah.
feasibility to shared, high efficiency vacuum, street cleaner?
I'll give you the short-ish version of that. So Great Bay 2030 funded it, agreed to fund it, and it was wonderful. I've just never had anything like this. So I was out of town, our intern input all of the information with Sally, and then basically it was like checks in the mail. I mean, we were like, wow. So that was awesome. So Dover was the entity that really spearheaded that, and it was because it was this very fast process. And that was on purpose, right? That was the intent of this money, is that it's not bogged down in process, right? So Like, so that's it. So it was fast like that. So it came, we got the funding, Dover went to city council with a resolution in March to receive the funding. And it was to develop a consultant, work with a consultant and a team and do this. We have been working with, Woodward and Kern had been part of PTAP for a very long time. They have in-house municipal services, they've got in-house legal services. There were a lot of reasons why that was a natural partnership. So myself, Jamie Hool and Sally Sewell and some other folks from the Water Quality Steering Committee have worked with them to develop a scope of work. Meanwhile, we were working with the state on how we categorize street sweeping, which was something that we did not see coming when we put in the Great Bay 2030. So that kind of stopped momentum a little bit, but we're in a good place now. We've got some good direction. We're working with the state. We're continuing to work with the state. You know, we potentially have other projects coming out of it. But right now we have a scope, we have a proposal, and I believe it's going to city council for approval like next week. It's right. It's any minute now we've gotten. So that'll kick off again. And we've had a meeting with the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation and have really spent some time explaining kind of exactly what happened and all the little pieces that we're moving. And it's interesting for them to hear too, you know, what happens with projects. So now we're back on track with that. And it did mean that we didn't turn around in Great Bay 2030. We'll have proposals again in October, September. I don't know, you know better.
Yeah.
Tomorrow. Okay.
Yeah. And I think
I don't have one idea. Yeah. But the water quality group has not recommended funding it because it just didn't make any progress this year. So other projects are gonna come. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other business then? All right, then let's schedule our next meeting for October. And to be transparent, we have a baby due in October, so we'll be too very long.
Oh, okay. All right then.
October 10th. So we'll see when that happens and we'll tell me. But I think we'll just schedule it anyway, and then if I'm here, I'm here, and if I'm not.
I am out of pocket the week of the 23rd. Oh, I could send someone in my place. I could send Jane.
It just the 23rd is looking like I will definitely not probably be here to do the 10th. So it'll be two of us missing. So do you want to do something? Do you want to do like either the week of the 16th or the week of the 30th and pushing it into November?
Depends how soon we think we'll have the proposals, you know, how
I know.
soon can prep and.
Colin, do you know how close you guys are to proposals for next year?
I think that any dates that you're talking about will end up sort of driving our development process. There will, no matter what, there will be things that we don't know, but we'll be able to get a lot of information together, working with Brown and Caldwell. So I think probably don't use that as a way to schedule.
Do you want, I guess it is, I am gonna use it because if sometimes it takes a closed deadline to push things. So if we did something the week of the 9th, do you think you'd have time to pull that off?
Oh, the week of, is that October 9th or November?
Yeah, October 9th, or we could do something late end of October, week of the 30th.
Yeah, I would prefer the second. I guess I'm being
That makes sense.
I'm flip-flopping, but yeah.
That's okay, because you don't need a huge amount between the executive committee and the members vote. So I think if you did the first or second week in November, you'd probably be fine. So do folks have either week of October 30th or week of November 6th. Do folks have preference? Katie?
I'm thinking week of the 30th, just because we have the election the week of the 7th.
Oh,
Fair.
good point. So, yeah,
So November 2nd?
I would have to be in Portsmouth by 4 to run a meeting, so. We could do the meeting in Portsmouth if people want to come that.
Do a 1 to 3 in Portsmouth and then. Does that work for folks? 1 to 3 in Portsmouth?
If you don't mind traveling.
November 2nd.
I should ask Jamie, does that work for you if you're still online?
I am here and yeah, I think that's fine for me.
So November 2nd from 1 to 3 Portsmouth.
We'll find the right
And,
room.
yeah, and the room can come out later, but
Yeah,
just
it
so
may
folks
be
know.
conference room A. Well, somewhere where the tech is easy and maybe it'll be digital.
Cool. All right. Then, final
Motion to
motion. All right, great motion by Suzanne.
Second.
Second by Katie. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.